It's a pleasure to talk with you because you're fluent and you've got something to say and you're cogent and you're comfortable with chatting about your work and stuff, which is not like 50% of people are not like that. 50% of people are really uncomfortable. That's a question I can ask you.
There you go.
Okay, here we go. Right. So through my work doing interviews, I've noticed that quite a lot of business people are really uncomfortable sitting down with a microphone talking about their work. Why do you think that is?
Well, I don't think it's about their work. I think it's more to do with the fact that they're speaking to a mic. As you know, I also do Radio Bucky, and getting people to speak into a mic is extremely difficult. Getting them to come in to speak to the mic is also extremely difficult.
Yeah.
For some reason, people seem to think that they're going to be on national television and they're going to be seen by millions and millions of people, and it's going to hit the radio broadcasting thing, and you know they're scared they've said the wrong thing or all the rest of it. And I keep saying this.
It'll be on their gravestone.
My audience at Radio Bucky consists of 1.5 M. I always say, and a lot of people go, "Wow, it's at 1.5 million." I went, "No, it's 1.5 men, a guy and his young boy, and they're the only two that listen."
And his dog as well.
And his dog, yeah, a man and his dog, you know, and the man's only listening because he's found out that my voice is very soothing to the dog and it puts him to sleep. And there's nothing else that works but that, so you know he's turned it on and that's it. So I think
that he doesn't want to listen to his wife.
I think the fact that when you introduce the mic and you're putting people start getting a little bit more nervous. They're thinking about big radio stations. They're thinking about big broadcasts, and they get nervous. They genuinely get nervous. I always like to make people feel at ease, just like you do, and once you achieve that, and you have no ulterior motives or trying to put them on the spot or anything like that, it's fine.
I still feel there's a lot of fear. I feel a lot of people are afraid that they might say the wrong thing and somebody might take it the wrong way.
Well, there you are. You've just hit the nail on the head. They're scared to say the wrong thing, or the wrong thing goes out, or the wrong thing may be conceived, or the wrong thing might be. But what they forget is it's edited. And what they also forget is that you're going to get a copy of that before. You're not going to put out something that people are uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
If you put something out that people are uncomfortable with, they're never going to come back.
Yeah.
What's that lead to? A dissatisfied customer. Yeah. What does a dissatisfied customer do? Tells 800 people. What does a satisfied customer do? Lucky if they tell 4 people.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because I think that people are sort of digging their own grave a little bit. I don't mean that in a very sort of dark way. I just mean that if you start to begin to think that you might say the wrong thing, you completely mess up on the message that you want to put out to people. And also, the less you do, the less you will do. And the more you do, the more you can do. And sort of the more content you create, the less important some of the things feel.
I've started to do YouTube videos.
Right.
Now, I was never really comfortable with doing YouTube videos, to be honest, and I absolutely hated them to start off with.
Yeah, I think, I think. Sorry to interrupt.
Just one time.
I think you have to feel like that at the beginning. I think that gives you some perspective.
I mean, even though it's you gain confidence with everything you do, you know, and I was never really comfortable with doing YouTube videos, even though it doesn't come across that way because you want it to come across as 110% confident and, you know, hey, you know, they can sell on the QVC channel with an American accent. Why can't I do it with a Scottish accent, you know? At the end of the day, I'm just trying to promote my wares and make people aware of it. And if this is a new way of doing it, well, so be it. Yeah. And again, I think that translates into radio a little bit as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've had now over 500,000 views on my YouTube channel.
Wow.
And
wow, well done.
And it's through volume of content put out basically, and doing things on it. Do a little bit every day, and it all builds up over a period of time.
A little bit every day helps you in every way.
Yeah, there you go. You could weave that into furniture somehow. A new piece of furniture every day helps you on your way or something. I don't know. But at the beginning and the progress, you're never going to be the first time you do something.
You're not going to be good at it.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to.
It's like when you want to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, you how many times do you fall before you learn to crawl?
Yeah.
You can learn to crawl before you can walk.
Yeah.
And then when you walk, you're being encouraged to walk. And that's with two people. Or sometimes even 4 or 5 granddads, grannies, uncles, all these people encourage you, come on, walk a little bit further. Hold on to that so oh my goodness, you've fallen down again.
I'm going to flip that round a bit. When you said problems with walking, it just made me think of being a student at the age of 18 and going to the student union bar. And, and it's a sort of it took me about a month to learn not to drink so much when I went to university because it was a bit wild. But that was all in the past. But
see, everybody's got a little story.
Yeah.
Everybody's got a little story to tell, and why not?
Yeah, I agree.
Why not?
I agree.
We hear all these stories. We hear Alan Michael Sugar Armstrong. We hear of Richard Branson. We hear of all these many people. We hear about all the bad people in the news. Okay,
right, yeah.
Murderers, rapers, looters, terrorists.
Yeah.
We hear all the bad news daily, and you know how often daily we hear bad news. How often do you think we hear bad news? Well, the news is on every hour on the radio.
Yeah.
Okay, and in some channels it's on every half hour because that's their hour.
Yeah.
And on news channels it's on 24/7.
Yeah.
And it's the same news all day long. All it is they add more and more bits to it. So if it's bad, it gets worse. By the time you get to midnight, it gets even worse. It gets worse and worse and worse, and it calms down just about midnight because it got to start off with another news story. Yeah. So why can't you reverse that to another good news story? Why can't you turn around and take somebody's life and turn around and say, "Hi, how are you doing?
Yeah,
tell me a bit about yourself."
Yeah. Because
you've got a story to tell. Everybody's got a story to tell.
It's very true. I don't think people realize their own potential sometimes.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the reasons I came back was I didn't enjoy Aberdeen. I loved Aberdeen. I was in Aberdeen during the 80s when oil was at the peak and there was heaps of Americans and the city was booming.
Yeah.
On Saturday, I decided to stay in Aberdeen one Saturday instead of coming home. And I went to get a key cut for my flat. And it was only the time that I could actually get time to get cut because I knew if I came home I'd be working. Yeah. So I wouldn't get anything done. So I went down the high street and all I got was shoulder butted all the way from where I did. I came back with a sore shoulder. Nobody asked me how I was. Nobody asked me what kind of day it was. Nobody asked me how things were going. Nobody smiled at me. There are people just demented on bumping into each other and pushing people out of the way. I thought, this is not what I like.
Yeah.
I like to be walking along the street and a perfect stranger saying, "Hello, morning."
It's nice.
Good morning to you, sir.
It's nice. Yeah. I was out in Central Eastern Europe for a long period of time, and one of the things that happens out there is a lot of people saying hi, hello, good day to each other who don't know each other, and I was like, that's so nice and polite. I really like that. And then I compared that to I lived in London before I moved out there, and nobody would look at anybody, nobody would talk to anybody in the street. It's just not welcoming. It wasn't comfortable, and it's one of the reasons why I left the city.
But there you go. And the other thing is, people up north have time.
Yeah.
They all have time. They're not rushing to catch a bus. They're not rushing to catch the subway. That means something new now. You can grab a sandwich, but I mean, So I mean, yes, you would run to grab a sandwich, I suppose.
You do both, right?
Talking about the train station rather than the franchise. But people
good naming.
People up north have time, and most people. and I mean this, most people are fine. You know, they're not your rapists, looters, terrorists, which is 1% of the population.
It's
They're
less
just
than
they're just
1%.
trying to do the same
Yeah.
thing that everybody else is trying to do,
Yeah.
and that is get on with life.
Yeah, I think about like you went to school, right? And say, like I went to school near here. I went to school. I went to Milnes, right? And what was there like 500, 600 kids in the school, and we all had to get on together. And there were a couple. There were a couple of bad kids. There were a handful of bad
There's
kids.
always a couple.
And it wasn't the kids that were bad. It was their parents who
Yeah.
didn't give them the right instructions. Basically, they forgot to read what was on the box, right? and it was just a handful that were bad, but everyone else was good. And that's like 99.95, 9.99% of the population is they're down. They're cool. They're just trying to
Yeah,
get by.
yeah. I mean, everybody's trying to. I mean, I always say, you know, what's the difference between an Australian plumber, an Aborigine plumber, an Indian plumber, a Saudi Arabian plumber, a Thailand plumber,
That-
a French plumber? You could go wherever you want in the world, but they're all wanting to do the same thing. If you take some fishermen, for example, and they don't know the language, but they know the language of fishing. They know what they've got one common language.
Oh yeah.
And you don't need language to talk. You can use sign language,
Yeah.
right? If I give you two fingers, you clearly know what that means. But I mean, in another culture, that might mean something completely different.
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, people can communicate if they want to, and it's only when you put people together, ordinary people together, that you realise that people are actually all the same. And if you stick out a bunch of fishermen in, you know what they're going to do? After half an hour of trying to sort things out between them in the same room, and let's say they're stuck in the same room for 3 days.
Right.
They're going to have relationships. They're going to be able to joke with people. They're going to be able to relate to people. They're going to find new ways of fishing. They're going to be able to discuss the same thing, you know, because they all come from the same background.
Yeah. Yeah. It's it's very true.
So the world's one.
Yeah.
And there's nobody born any different to anybody else. Now, obviously, we have people that are born different. But again, that goes back to the 1%.
Yeah. The born difference is sort of a physical element. I mean, there's this meme that goes around the internet like nobody's born a racist. It's basically true.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
I mean, you're just born trying to, you know, get milk.
Well, yeah, exactly. It depends on how that person's been groomed to start off with, what environment that person's been in, and what experiences they've had of that person. Generalizations are a really bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anybody can generalize.
Oh, it's such a mistake, isn't it?
You
It's
know.
like, but there's another level to that, and
I mean, you know, I love that quote from Nelson Mandela. He was asked on, well, his daughter was asked because he'd passed away on a TV program. Did your father ever teach you hatred? Did he ever teach you to hate after he'd been in jail for 27 years? And she went, no, he didn't. He always taught us love. He told us that governments teach hate. People learn to love each other. Wow.
That's so true. That's so true. And I think the point you made about, you know, the generalizations is very important as well. On a personal level, I'm going to add something here. Something that really, really bugs and annoys me is when I have to qualify everything in terms of generalizations. Yeah, like if I say all their songs are bad, and I'm talking about a music group or whatever, I always feel like I have to say, yeah, well, they've probably got one or two good ones that I haven't heard of or whatever. I always feel like I have to qualify everything, and I would like listeners to have an understanding that when I say all their songs are bad, they might understand that there might be something that I haven't heard that they've done that's good, and I hate having to qualify everything just to keep everybody happy.
Well, you know, it's like everything else. Music is a universal thing, right? And it's accepted around the world. You don't need language because it's got a beat.
Yep.
There's two things. There's actual words and the actual beat. And you don't need any interpretation to understand the language with the beat. And the beat's universal, right? And there's genres of music that I don't like listening to, It doesn't mean to say it's good music or bad music.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you an example, right? If I was an investor, I can't stand heavy metal music. I'm not saying I don't like heavy metal music. I just don't like. I think to me it's just a bad sound. But that's to me. If I was an investor and this band was doing really well, do you think I'd care whether or not I liked it or not? As long as it produced returns, that's all that I would be interested in.
Yeah.
So there's different levels of looking at things.
Oh yeah,
You know?
absolutely.
And if you've got somebody with a genuine interest in heavy metal, and you turn around and say, I hate heavy metal, well, what's going to happen? You're going to go head-on collision, right?
Yeah.
So you've always got to have that little bit of, like you say, have you heard all their tracks? No, I haven't. How did they get to where they went to? Well, maybe they tried something else and it didn't work for them. Maybe this is what's working for them because there's an avenue for them to go down. And maybe there's a reason. Maybe they don't even like that song either.
Yeah.
Have you ever bothered asking them? Well, you don't know. What you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've also personally, again, I've always discovered that any prejudice that I've had, which has popped into my mind for whatever reason, has just been the result of ignorance, of me not understanding something properly. If there's been somebody in my life that I didn't like, once I actually took the time to get to know them and learn about them and their struggles and their problems, it's like the prejudice disappears because it's just
it's about education. And
Yeah.
it's about if you're taught something and if the media get behind it and they really publicise it and push it because it's coming from a certain point of view, then you're going to have that type of prejudice because it seems to be generalised. Again, we're getting back to that word generalised.
Oh, but it's true because people pick up on whatever's happening within their environment. I mean, kids only know what they're taught.
Well, why do you think soaps are so popular? Because people want to get away from the environment that is work, home, work, home. They want to have a bit of release. Why do you think there's so many films released? Why do you think people go and spend money on films? It's because they want a release. They want to get away from the inverted comma work home environment to dream of another place where it might be possible.
Yeah.
That they might be. I mean, Bollywood's an example of that. You know, I mean, everything that happens in Bollywood doesn't happen in the villages. That's for sure. And to understand Bollywood, for example, all the films are about 3.5 hours long. It takes you about 3.5 hours, 4 hours viewing time. It's a month's wages in India and Pakistan if you're going to watch it. So, can you imagine going to see a film for that's going to cost a month's wages and it's over an hour and a half? It's not really not going to add up, is it?
No.
So you want to give them this huge experience, and it's like everything else. Everybody learns through experience, and I remember being at school and people turning around and saying, "Well, I didn't realise that people of your colour actually had white hair." And I thought, well, I've got uncles with white hair. What are you talking about? They come to funeral services in Bucky. They come to weddings in Bucky, and people go, "Wow, they got white hair." Yeah, of course. Other people have black hair that turns into white hair.
Yep. There's a lot of ignorance in the world.
But I mean, it's a time, it's a place, it's a moment, and it's a lot to do with understanding. And like I say, 99% of people are fantastic, and ignorance is a great thing. If nowadays you don't know something, there's a fantastic machine called Google and computers, and you can look up stuff.
Yep.
That never used to be relevant before. I mean, the thing is, you had the local library before, and if you wanted something out of the ordinary, then you just didn't get that information. My local library was full of fishing and books and wood and joinery and metalwork and things like that. So when I watched Hawaii Five-0 and I absolutely loved it, the culture, and I loved the sun and all the rest. I wanted to find out more about it. I went to the local library to find out about Hawaii, and I couldn't find a damn thing. And the only information I got about Hawaii was from a local travel agent.
Wow.
So there was nothing there. because do local people travel to Hawaii? In that day, probably not. So there's no point having a book there, was there?
No, that's a great point.
And now you've got the World Wide Web. And it's again, like we were speaking about ignorance when I was talking about the World Wide Web. The council, we were running training courses, and I didn't know what the World Wide Web was at the time. And I remember they ran training courses, and I. And they were trying to show you what a web page was, and of course this is the early days of the internet, and so I went up to Elgin, and remember the name is www. Everybody knows it now. It's called the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
So at that time, what they had was a person on one web page. They designed this one web page that was sitting next door, and you were in this other room, and you typed in this web page, and it came up. Now, of course, I'm not run the mill here, so of course I'm come from things at a different angle to a lot of other people. So, but I'd picked up on the word world wide. So they said, we'll put in whiskey and you'll see the page that comes up. So we put in those days there was no Google. So they put this Scottish whiskey page up, and up popped this page of whiskey. I went, oh, that's good. What's it got on Indian curry? And she looked at me in the face and went, don't be so stupid. I went, I beg your pardon? She went, don't be so stupid. Nobody wants to know about Indian curry. I went, well, hang on. There are many, many Indian restaurants up and down the country. Surely to God there must be catering to somebody.
Yeah.
And I said to her, but you told me it was called the World Wide Web.
Yeah.
And I'm sure India, last time I looked at the atlas, India was on in the world.
Yeah.
Unless it's moved since I've seen it last. I've just no idea. Now, she was quite puzzled and taken aback with this. So she went into the next room and said to the guy, this guy next door, he's asking about Indian curry. And the guy next door, and of course I left the door open, which is why I heard the rest of the conversation, turned around and went, but I've only got one page in whiskey. So having heard this, I thought to myself, this will be interesting. So she came back and shut the door, and she went, well, try something else. I went, okay then. And I thought very quickly, well, they related it to Scottish whiskey, so I can relate back. I've got a Scottish heritage. I know damn fine anything about Scotland. So you know what? I'll do. Let's try this one. So, where's the origin of St Andrews come from?
No idea.
And she went running next door and she said to the guy, he's asking about where the origin of St Andrew comes from.
Okay.
And he went, best send him away. He's asking too many questions. Now, if you do that today, you get tons of information on Google, Wikipedia, on many pages. If you want to learn something today, it's a lot easier than it was before.
Yeah, there's no excuses anymore.
There's no excuses anymore.
It's all there, and the 6 degrees of separation is in your pocket now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
you can have a chat with somebody halfway around the world. Remember, I was telling you about that in Dubai, where my nephew put the webcam in his mouth.
Yeah.
And I went from day to day and dark to day or day to night or whatever it was.
You can direct message people on Instagram. You can find famous people on Instagram, and you can send a message directly to them. That's wild.
Send a message direct to the CEO of a big company, and he might even read it.
Well,
we grew up watching Blue Peter, and I never forget. I never ever used to write a letter into Blue Peter because I always wanted to, but I came very.
Well, Blue Peter was the kids program, right?
Yeah,
it was a kids, but with entertainment technology.
Yeah, it was good. It was
fun things.
It was
educational,
fun way. John Noakes, Peter Purvis, and the two girls.
And a dog.
Leslie,
as well,
Leslie. I'm trying to remember the other one. Valerie Singleton.
Right.
That was it was brilliant. I loved it to bits. But you had to write a letter into the program.
Did they have the do 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 do
Yep.
do do?
They had the tune there.
I haven't heard that for like 30 years.
It was
God.
absolutely brilliant, and you learned something every day. You know, I used to rush home from school, get changed. We're going to watch Blue Peter. It was on every day, and every day they would have sackfuls of letters and all the rest of it, and they would turn around and say, you know. But I very quickly came to the conclusion that nobody from Bucky ever wrote in to Blue Peter, and I came to the conclusion I think I know why nobody from Bucky writes into Blue Peter.
Okay.
Is because if they say on air somebody from Bucky wrote into Blue Peter, first of all they have to identify where Bucky is.
Right.
Now, most of Scotland don't know where Bucky is, so never mind down south in England. So I mean, it's going to take a hell. You have to explain where Bucky is when we're in Glasgow. Never mind nothing else. So, you know. What's the point in reading a letter from a small population? But if you said it was from Manchester, then everybody sort of in Manchester would be watching the programme, wouldn't they? So they'd be wanting to say, do I know this guy? And suddenly you've got 300,000 people watching it rather than a couple of thousand.
And that's the basis of understanding elements of marketing, really.
Yeah.
You know, that's understanding the groups and the target audience and the interests, and it's all in there. Really.
And then, so when I found out that they could actually email the program and there might be a chance of it, I thought, how's this going to work? And, well, obviously you can see how it works.